Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Sterling and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Sterling. And, Bill, is some very interesting things going on that are very current in the political discourse. And it brings to mind, the American brand and then the sort of factions of the Republican brand, a Democratic brand within that. And I thought it might be a good thing to have a discussion around today.
Yeah, it's a great thing, Tom. What's going to take to kind of build the American brand around respect, respectful communication towards each other, challenging each other based on information and facts instead of the name calling or the judgments and almost salesmanship that is kind of dominating the political space. It's and also once you get into a place where when you're selling and not selling something, then respect and other values that you have can kind of go under the bus a little bit. It's like you run it over and over again and again. It's sort of like people are not going to believe that you're saying the truth. People are not going to extend trust to you. And yes, you've made the sale, but you have lost the loyalty of other people, and they won't come back to you eventually. And there's a lot of problems that when a brand chooses to go down this path for its own behalf. So the Republicans are facing it. The Democrats have trouble reclaiming them, what they're up to, and so there's a lot to talk about in the news. There's different people react, to try to say, wait a minute, I've had enough of this. So it has definitely been a challenge for what is the Republican brand going to stand for? What is the Democratic brand going to stand for? And will they ever come together to rebuild American respect again? Will they do that? Because it's going to take a little bit of work. Probably, I'm going to put it somewhere between 10 to 12 years to bring it back. Could start right away, but you have to actually start doing things to really demonstrate that you're standing in the right place in the face of opposition. So that's a big challenge, and we could see it in the news media and stuff.
We can. I mean, I think there are lots of things going on globally with coronavirus where you talk about the American brand that's been damaged in terms of, credibility and being in alignment with, the truth of a global pandemic. And there was already brand damage to the American brand going on really throughout the Trump presidency, in terms of, disrespect for other leaders and, shithole countries and, all sorts of things, right?
That's right.
But now, there's a very interesting example that's been thrust into, the consciousness of the media, at least, and I think people are starting to see it just this Memorial Day weekend. That I think is a great example that we can talk about and, approach it from a couple of different ways of, is this
Sure.
effective? And is this going to help the brand or further damage the brand, or is it just not effective communication?
Yeah, so examples that of people, stating their opinion. I'm guessing that uh, they're forcefully saying, "Wait a minute, you know, I've got to at least fight for something," and that truth is, or even the fact of that, doesn't have a penetration piece to it. It doesn't stick. It just becomes another person that a person can call a name at, and it's really really tough um, when a scorched earth kind of mindset shows up to say, "Wait a minute, I am I'm not standing for this. I've this person stood for something, and I thought they were going to do something, and they didn't do it."
Well, and the irony is you have sort of the labeler in chief, in the office who labels and diagnoses people routinely. Um, and that same kind of attack against him doesn't land
No.
as well, right? So, well, let's bring a little context into this for our listeners. Over Memorial Day weekend, Donald Trump went on a Twitter rant against Jeff Sessions again. Jeff Sessions, his former
Right.
attorney general, who's running for the Senate seat, Republican Senate seat from Alabama. And he said 3 years ago, Jeff Sessions recused himself. The fraudulent Mueller scam began. Alabama, do not trust Jeff Sessions. He let our country down. That's why I endorsed Coach Tommy Tuberville, the true supporter of our hashtag MAGA agenda. And that set off a right wing conservative pundit, Ann Coulter, who now, it's important to understand Ann Coulter has never been one to shy away from being controversial. In fact, it's kind of her brand. I think that
Right.
she
Right.
uses controversy to get attention to try to make
Right.
her points, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
but what's interesting here is Ann Coulter goes on then Ann Coulter then goes on a Twitter rant of her own in response to Donald Trump's about Jeff Sessions, presenting a lot of facts that are relevant to the Republican brand and I think in some ways the American brand. But and she's making some points, which I'll try to summarize here, briefly. But she uses a lot of tragic language in and just labeling and diagnosing and going scorched earth on Trump, which undercuts her message, I think.
As you're explaining this, the easiest way to cut through it language wise is, what did the person say or do? And when the person says or does something, what are they trying to get at? And Ann Coulter would be quicker and more effective if she would say, the need for trust is not met with what Trump is saying, because even though he's accusing Jeff Sessions of not being loyal to him, he is also not delivering on the truth that people voted for. They voted for the wall. They voted for, all the different things that they voted for, right? There's the whole list of MAGA things that he would go. They voted for drain the swamp. They voted for the wall, and he did not deliver. Who's the one out of integrity? Jeff Sessions or Donald Trump?
I would say much more Donald Trump than Jeff Sessions, for sure.
Now, notice how I was able to get agreement out of you.
Well,
and all I did was just refocus her message.
Yeah.
I just you go, oh, Bill, you're making sense. Well, if she's placing her language in the narrative of comparison, see, Trump's trying to compare Jeff Sessions to the person that he wants to endorse. Well, all Ann Coulter has to do to actually land the punch, because on Twitter, all she did was flail. Once you use the strategy of name calling, you flail. If you and what winds up happening with somebody that flails in the media marketing is the flailing gets to be repeated. So even though Crooked Hillary is a flailing punch, if the media grinds it over, it becomes a smooth stone very quickly. It becomes impactful because it's sticking in my brain. But does it mean it's true? No, it doesn't mean it's true.
It's stuck in everybody's brain, but the president kept, repeating it over and over and over as candidate Trump. And no one did anything else that would land better to help separate, Hillary Clinton from this label. So it's interesting because, this behavior of Trump's that's, I think, so, how do I say, his labeling and diagnosis behavior is the brand or the marketer that he is. It's so fundamental to who he is as a person that he sticks with it, and nobody else knows how to defend themselves against it effectively, or no one yet has demonstrated that.
They don't, because it just gives him a new target. Now Ann Coulter will be called a never Trumper, and then the people want to be on the side of Trump says, see, she's a never Trumper, and it literally burns the another notch in the Republican brand gets to
It's damaged, doesn't it?
It's damaged. I mean, it's like Republicans are a group of whiny name callers. Is that where they're going to go? Yeah, that's where they're going. And silent, what do you call it? Enablers. CILENTIN.
Well,
now notice that name calling that I did also is not effective. See, I'll call myself on name calling. It's great for poetry. It's interesting for rap music. It's something that is really good. It's brand and a sort of brand message. But is it brand America? Is it brand America? Is this what we're going to do going forward? Are we going to do a respecting brand, or are we going to do a supportive brand? We used to be world leaders on stuff like pandemics. We used to put our muscle to work. This is why we got the muscle of the federal government to do what it does. Go keep Ebola on another country's soil. Do not let it get to here by helping out the other country. Don't go, why are we spending money over there? Let's not help them, because we don't want their disease to come to us. That's why that's brand America. We
that's
help
really
them,
interesting, Bill. Yeah. No,
so that
right.
their crap doesn't come over here. Hey, we're letting them be a third world country, but their disease has got to stay on their soil, not get to us. They could be a second world country. This is a China and India kind of thing. It's like, but they're first world now. It's like they're coming into it with their infrastructure and stuff. They're playing the game. They're figuring out how can we get a balanced economy, and how can we work together, but do it under an authoritarian regime. Okay, if they're getting there, they're getting there. And can they stand for those values? But there's some that they don't. Freedom of expression, they don't do that, because they see what the damage of freedom of expression does without the need for respect being at the front of the list. It's got to be up in the front.
Well, so this is very interesting, Bill. So you're talking about really the American brand, what should be, something all Americans can agree on is, trying to help the trying to help the countries that can't help themselves to keep that over there exhibiting some, global leadership and collaboration to
Yes.
achieve that goal. And then that's the American brand that's been damaged so much, and now you got the Republican brand that is really Republican, and I would say big C conservative brand that Ann Coulter is upset the president has trampled on. So let me bring a few highlights of this Twitter rant,
Sure.
because I think it's a really good example of trying to present facts, but then tragic language being used that then, like I said, undercuts it. I forget the word you were using, that, same thing. But
Yeah, it undercuts it, throws it under the bus. Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't,
so
it doesn't add to
so
it.
Ann Coulter starts in this response again to Donald Trump, who is going, scorched earth and labeling and diagnosing his former Attorney General Jeff Sessions because he's not being loyal, the big L loyal to Trump. She says, 3 years ago, a complete moron of a president, first label thrown out there for you, told NBC's Lester Holt, in quotes, "I was going to fire Comey. When I decided to just do it, I said to myself, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made up story," end quote. Then Ann Coulter writes in capital letters, "Bam, special prosecutor." What she's saying is that it wasn't Jeff Sessions recusing himself that caused the Russia hoax, as he would put it, of an investigation. The investigation was already, swirling around and maybe, being looked at by the FBI and stuff, but it was actually Trump's own words that got him into hot water and got the Mueller probe to get going. And she's right, factually.
Factually, she's right.
But again,
No help.
throwing in the complete moron doesn't
No
really
help.
help her message there.
No help.
And then she is thinking that Trump is going to, with his own actions of trying to torpedo Jeff Sessions and support this challenger, Tuberville, that the Republicans are likely to lose the majority control in the Senate, with that type of behavior.
So let's replace one word. Let's
Yeah.
replace the word moron with the word accountability.
Okay.
Okay. So if Ann Coulter wants to get her message to land, the word accountability, it needs to move to the front of the list instead of the word moron. It's like, what does accountability look like? Accountability is not blaming the person who couldn't support you. Accountability is not opening your mouth and breaking and starting and giving the other side something that they're compelled to by law enact. You gave them the opening. It's not Jeff's fault that he couldn't keep the dam from breaking. You put a hole in the dam. You did that. See, accountability looks like you're the person that's responsible, Mr. President. And oh, by the way, if you want to talk about accountability, your words don't count either. You were never intending to build the wall. You never had the will to do it. You never had the political might to get it done. You never could build loyalty in order to get parts of the wall built that might have been helpful for the nation. Instead, you promised something you could never deliver just to get the vote. And you did, but you also didn't deliver. You don't have anything to promise or anything to show for that promise. Nothing. So accountability, Mr. President, looks like not picking on Jeff Sessions. Accountability looks like doing what you say you're doing. Bam.
Well, so that messaging would be much more effective. It's interesting, I don't know if a
It's
person
not
like
coming out of
Ann
her mouth.
Coulter doesn't care to that because it seems compassionate or whatever, but or just because maybe it's not controversial enough, and she always wants to be
Wants
and
the
is controversial
controversial.
because it gets her attention. I don't know, but so a couple more, and again, the labels are going to be kind of obvious here, but like I was saying,
Please.
she's talking about the Alabama Senate race. She says, the most disloyal actual retard that has ever set foot in the Oval Office, talk about a tragic label there, is trying to lose and take the Senate with him, another Roy Moore fiasco, so he can blame someone else for his own mess. Now, that one
Truth.
is well, there's some truth in that he may assist in or enable, the Democrats to retake the Senate if he isn't supporting the best Republican candidates. And it's sort of what I think Ann Coulter is concerned about is the Ross Perot effect happening in Alabama, basically, or the more, to put it in more recent terms, the Roy Moore effect. Trump was supporting a guy who was, probably not
marginal at best.
Yeah, not a candidate with the most integrity in the world on a few levels, and ended up getting a Democrat elected to the Senate in Alabama in what was it, 2018, or I forget when it was.
Yep.
But in any case, so now Trump pardon me, now Bill, to go on and about one of your points. That's why your name was on my mind. You talked about the wall there a minute ago, and Coulter is calling Trump out in this Twitter rant, saying Trump didn't build the wall and never had any intention of doing so. The one person in Trump's administration who did anything about immigration was Jeff Sessions. Now, here comes the tragic language, and this lout attacks him. So then she's again labeling him as a lout, taking what she, was saying there, which was a very truthful statement about Trump never built the wall. Jeff Sessions was supportive of the wall and tougher immigration, and Trump threw him out for disloyalty. And then here's the real sobering one, which you and I have talked about in the past on this podcast, Bill, is that she says COVID gave Trump a chance to be a decent, compassionate human being, and then in parentheses, or pretending to be. And then she says, but he couldn't even do that. Now, that one statement doesn't seem to have any labels or diagnosis. Of course, it's one tweet packed in around like within a dozen tweets. That's just full of tragic language, which is not helping her message. But this is something you and I have said, is like, if the president, he's been served up some softballs, slow pitch softballs, like a journalist saying, Mr. President, what would you say to Americans that are worried right now? And instead of using that to appear like a real leader and presidential, even if you don't have that compassion or empathy, I mean, it was served to him on a silver platter to appear like the parent, the father of America, trying to reassure everyone that we're going to get through this, whatever. Instead, he attacks a journalist and says he's a terrible reporter.
No skill. The skill to be able to see what is being provided. It's like, how can we as human beings really get that level of connection that we need, and to be able to make it work? Trump's not changing. He's not changing at all. It's going to be the same all the way through the next election cycle. The same kind of stuff that we saw at the Republican National Convention 4 years ago is the same thing we're going to see this year. Only the problem is going to be is who's going to get up there and speak on his behalf? Who is he going to have? Last time he had Scott Baio. Last time he had Flynn up there. Last time he had Rudy up there. Who's gonna get up and speak on his behalf? Who? Who is going to put their reputation? Who's going to speak at that convention? Who?
Well,
And
what's
very,
interesting
very
is I think he will get a lot of people to speak, but it's people that quite clearly put loyalty to Trump above party. And ironically, mega hashtag and all, ironically, over the American brand. Right?
Well, is the American brand, going to be what Trump? See, it's kind of strange that Trump is selling his brand of high priced condos in the best locations, blah, blah, blah. And then he's completely selling this other brand down here at the same time. It's like this group of people who want to be in this group of I'm supporting the rich guy, but they are not rich people. It's very, very difficult to see an American brand to be so split like this. It's like, the heartless capitalist open up early. So what if grandma dies? It's like, what good is grandma anyways? It's a little bit of a head shaker, and that a person that has lost an uncle to COVID has lost, there's people around me that are really affected by this. It's awareness about what the cost and the loss is. And the thing to kind of like really to make an impression around this is a little closer to what the Times did, over the weekend, is put all the names of the people on the front of the page and put not just the names, but a little part of their life story, what they contributed to this nation, and going like, who did not protect this? And this is like a living tombstone for the front of the paper is like the image of a tombstone. And it's a head shaker, because when you start down the process of just reading those little snippets of what these people, what their lives were, how they contributed, what the loss was of a 51-year-old passing, of a 61-year-old passing, of, an 85-year-old passing that did X, Y, and Z. Don't they get the honor and respect of a full life? Even if the last few years of their life isn't the greatest, don't they get that? Come on. Instead, letting something like this, or even allowing it to continue, was done on your watch. And that's an accountability factor. Here's what accountability looks like is this group of people passed under your watch. You could try to hang it on so-and-so. You can try to do it on this. You can try to amplify the things that you did do that were minimal. But this happened on your watch. And if you aren't, quote, man enough to say, this happened on my watch, we made some mistakes early, but now we're doing things to protect every life from here on out, then you haven't earned your job again. You don't get to have this job again. We're going to fire you from the job. See, even as I'm speaking this way, Tom, you see how this is what respectful language looks like, and this is what language that has perspective in, and it's disheartening, but it's kind of the way he's doing this, and he's not like he doesn't fall on the the mistake sword ever. Don't ever show them that you're flawed. You know?
Yeah,
And
yeah. To
just from
him,
his,
that is a completely. It's like, if Trump has, it'd be interesting to identify Trump's cardinal rules, right? One of them
right.
is you're completely loyal to me. If you ever express any disloyalty, you're done. You're dead to me. I'm going to turn on you. He has to have 100% complete loyalty. That's cardinal rule number one. Cardinal rule number two is never admit you did anything wrong. That's another one of his cardinal rules. He
Right.
will never
Right.
admit to a mistake or express regret over anything. And
so difficult. So difficult to watch that take place. The conservative brand of let's not spend a lot of money. Let's not spend things that are wasteful. Well, except for the military and except for corporations that we need to bail out. But everything else we don't want to spend a lot of money on. We don't want to spend money on social services. We don't want to spend money helping the poor because they're not working hard enough. We don't want to spend whatever those brand has all been boiled down to, are you loyal to this person or are you not loyal to this person? That's they're struggling because how do you reclaim a GOP, grand old party of respect and conservatism where your party has been hijacked by a loyalty brand, which is more like a mafia brand label diagnosis. I called myself on the same word. So see, once you call yourself on what you're doing and how it's not helpful, notice how it becomes helpful. You just got to call yourself on what you're doing. If you want to call somebody a name, own that that's what you're doing, as well as walk it back and tell everybody it's not helpful. It really does make the big difference. Is you got to walk it back right then and there as you're doing it. Now, all President Trump would need to do is walk things back as they're happening, and they would never get any oxygen. This thing about Clorox inside the system, gosh, it is so effective outside the body, but gosh, if there was a way to do it, but there really isn't a way to do it, and it's really kind of just an idea of something that's, we can wash our hands, but we can't do it inside the body. Isn't that interesting? Some ways to get something around this virus that'll work. He just walked it back, but said the same thing.
Yeah.
Does he have any skill? No.
Now everybody who, makes all these memes about injecting Clorox or whatever, Trump would have taken all that oxygen right out of it,
That's
before
right.
anybody else had a chance to attack him for it.
Yeah. People want to, fight for the underdog. They want to vote for the underdog. They want to, go like, I want something to change. See, I think this is maybe this episode, Tom, is Truth and Brand America Part 1. And we do a Part 2 on this because the Republican brand needs restoration. The Democratic brand needs clarity. The big tent, there's enough room underneath this tent for all of us, is something that's not selling well because of this one group that is pushing in this one marginalized way, and it's been different, and it's been growing in America. The Tea Party came in and then washed right back out as quickly as they came in. Because they got there and they said, this is complex. My belief around making it simple regarding the Tea Party, it's went right back out because running government is complex. Trump said it very clearly. Healthcare, who would have ever known it was so complex? It's like, because it is.
Oh my goodness.
It is. So more to come on this, Tom. I really appreciate it. And thanks again for, being here and being the person to keep your finger on the pulse, and let's keep trying to change the communication patterns so that we can get back to America that can have civil conversations, move into a place of restoration, figure out what brand we want to stand for going forward, let's move in that direction so we can get the restoration of America up and going the way it needs to.
That sounds great, Bill. Listeners, we're going to have the blog post, obviously, at billsterley.com for this episode, where we'll have the link for this article that I was referring to. It's from yahoo.com with, if you want to read, all about Ann Coulter's Twitter rant and what, precipitated that over Labor Day weekend. And Bill, you mentioned something else. I forget what it was, but regarding this weekend, but I'm going to have that. We'll have that in the blog post as well. So thank you, Bill. I look forward to Truth and Brand America Part 2.
Yes, we'll have a little fun with that. Thanks, Tom.
Right.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.